Good afternoon, everyone. We're gonna let everyone finish filing in and we'll start in a few minutes.
Y muy buenas tardes a todos. Vamos a permitir que sigan entrando aquí todos los participantes que vayan a asistir y luego empezaremos en un par de minutos. Gracias.
All right, thank you, everyone. It looks like the numbers have gotten steady. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today for our Electric Bicycle Incentives Project Work Group. My name is Aria Berliner, and I am the staff lead over the Electric Bicycle Incentives Project. I am joined today by Lisa McCumber, manager over the Electric Bicycle Incentives Project, the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project, and the Clean Vehicle Assistance Program. Before we get started, I want to go over some logistics for today's discussion. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. We anticipate a copy of the recording will be made available on the Low Carbon Transportation Investments and Air Quality Improvement Program Meetings and Workshops page in approximately 2 weeks. Materials for today's work group are available in a link that will be posted into the chat very shortly. Additionally, today's meeting is being translated live in Spanish and American Sign Language. In a little bit, you will be able to access the interpretation button at the bottom of the screen. For Spanish speakers, please join the Spanish channel and the meeting will be translated into Spanish. Please be mindful when speaking so that the interpreters can translate what you're saying. You do not need to speak super slow, but we ask that you do not speak super fast. If you use sign language, please let Lisa McCumber know in the chat box, which has been enabled only for this purpose. Raise your hand as normal, and we will promote you to panelist. We will not be using the Q&A box today, and that feature has been disabled. We will be leveraging Zoom's raise hand feature to facilitate questions and comments. Please remember to state your name and affiliation when making a comment or asking a question. If there are disruptions for any reason, including malicious intent, we will immediately end today's meeting and send out another notice to reschedule. And lastly, we are unable to allow anonymous meeting participants for security reasons. Please make sure your name is clear on the Zoom platform. If you have called in, we will adjust your phone number and call on you if you raise your hand based on the last 4 digits of your phone number. Leticia or Mark?
Very good, thank you. Muy buenas tardes a todos que nos acompañan aquí para la reunión pública para el proyecto de incentivos de bicicletas eléctricas. Aquí respondiendo al comentario de Aria Berliner, que está aquí liderando el seminario web para el día de hoy junto con su asociada Lisa McCumber. Queremos dejarles saber que tendremos interpretación durante el programa disponible para el día de hoy, lo cual se disponibilizará en breve. En un momento verán un icono en la parte inferior de su pantalla que tiene un globo que dice Interpretation o Interpretación y podrán seleccionar su idioma. En breve le daremos instrucción sobre cómo acceder a ese canal para poder escuchar el programa enteramente. Sepa, por favor, que se permiten comentarios solamente de aquellos que tienen su nombre enteramente listado por medio de Zoom por razón de seguridad. No podemos aceptar comentarios de personas que vienen anónimamente. Por favor, asegúrense de que su nombre esté listado correctamente para que se le ceda la palabra cuando llegue el momento de comentarios públicos. Thank you, Aria. Back to you.
Thanks, Mark. Now we'll move on to the agenda. Today's agenda is as follows. First, we are going to give some background and talk about the poll results from the last work group. Then we will talk about the more finalized details of the program, income limits and eligible retailers. We'll then bring forward suggestions about eligible e-bikes as well as the work we've been doing on incentives. In an effort to cover all of the materials on today's agenda, we will go through the slides first and then open it up for discussion. We will then talk about program implementation and topics that will be covered at later work groups. After we finish discussing those topics, I'll provide a brief timeline and then close with next steps.
Mencionaremos la agenda para el día de hoy. Claro, haremos aquí los antecedentes sobre el programa de bicicletas eléctricas y cómo se podrá implementar ese programa. De ahí podremos hablar un plazo de tiempo que sigue y los pasos que siguen. Thank you, Aria. Back to you. And whenever you're ready, we're okay to go for the Spanish channel now.
Lisa, can you go ahead and enable the Spanish channel?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Now I'd like to provide some background for this project. The Electric Bicycle Incentives Project was established by CARB in November 2021. We have held 3 work groups on solicitation development and 3 on program implementation so far. We launched the solicitation for an administrator in April 2022 and announced the winner in August. The grant has been signed and Pedal Ahead will begin work on December 1st, 2022. We are still aiming to launch the consumer-facing program in the first quarter of 2023. I'm providing a 2022 federal poverty limit table in this presentation because I know a lot of people have been asking for one. This is available on the slides posted to our website for this work group. Please note that these figures are updated annually. Before we dive into policy considerations, I'd like to discuss the poll results from the last work group. The answers that were provided gave us insight into how you wanted the program designed. The pie chart on the screen represents the responses to the question, should CARB provide a larger incentive for participants with the lower income threshold, below 225% of the federal poverty limit, or an applicant that lives in a disadvantaged community, as defined by Count and Virus Screen? A majority of people said that CARB should provide a larger incentive for both lower income and those residing in DACs or disadvantaged communities. The number N equals 72 at the bottom of the screen represents the number of people that participated in that poll. Similarly, this bar chart provides the distribution of responses to the what is the lowest incentive level that is most likely to encourage you or the communities you represent to purchase and use an electric bike for local trips instead of using a car question. Most people indicated that that a base incentive of between $750 to $1,000 would be appropriate. On this next bar chart, we have the distribution of responses to the for participants with special e-bike needs. What is the lowest additional incentive that is most likely to encourage you or a member of your community to purchase and use a cargo or adaptive bike, etc.? Question. Most people indicated that they would need the base incentive plus $750. This last bar chart provides the distribution of responses to what is the lowest additional incentive CARB should consider for participants with a lower income threshold below 225% of the federal poverty limit, or an applicant that lives in a disadvantaged community as defined by Cal EnviroScreen. Most people indicated that they would ask participants that the participants should have $750 plus the base incentive. Now I'd like to discuss some policy considerations. Based on the discussion at the September 28th, 2022 work group, as well as the changes in income limits approved by our board on November 17th, staff is setting the eligible income limit for this program at 300% of the federal poverty limit, which means in 2022, for a family of 4, in order to be eligible to receive an e-bike incentive, their income would have to be $83,250 or less. For an individual, that number is about $40,770. CARB is making a significant effort to ensure that these projects are equitable. And one of the ways that we can do that is setting an income limit. We understand the chain supply struggles that e-bike manufacturers and most industries have experienced throughout the pandemic. In one of the first work groups for this project, we discussed limiting retailer participation to only local bike shops, but heard from a lot of you that we should include online e-bike retailers. As a result, staff is suggesting that we work with both local bike shops and online e-bike retailers with a physical presence in California, meaning that they have a physical shop, that their manufacturing is done in California, or that they have their corporate office in California. In addition to supporting California businesses, we are requiring this physical presence in California so that we can somewhat ensure that the bikes purchased through this incentive program are serviceable in California. Based on the comments and feedback from the September 28th, 2022 work group, staff is proposing to include all e-bikes, all e-bike classes, which means class 1s are included, class 2 is included, and class 3 is included. Similar to the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project, electric bicycles will have to be vetted to be eligible for the incentive. We want to make sure that people are buying serviceable electric bicycles with strong warranties that will meet the rider's demands. Electric bicycles eligible for the program will have to have a manufacturer-provided warranty of at least 2 years, meaning that eligible bicycles will have to have an existing 2-year warranty before there is any option to buy an extended warranty. Incentive amounts. Research for this is still ongoing. Other programs have provided incentives of about $1,000 to low-income consumers for electric bicycles. And we looked at proposals and the programs in Denver, British Columbia, Redding, California, San Mateo, California, amongst others. We are still considering bump ups for special e-bikes, so cargo, utility e-bikes, and bump ups for DAC residents and individuals with very low income. And by DAC, I mean disadvantaged community. Program implementation. We'd like to now talk about program implementation. Staff is proposing implementing this program through a needs-based approach. Applications will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. However, funds will automatically be reserved for applicants that either live in a disadvantaged or low-income community as defined by Cal EnviroScreen 4.0, or if they have an income of at most 225% of the federal poverty limit. These applicants will also have their applications processed sooner. Applicants who do not meet one of these criteria may experience longer wait times for their applications to be processed. The priority criteria is as follows. Applicants that either live in a disadvantaged community or low-income community as defined by Cal EnviroScreen 4.0, or have an income of at most 225% of the federal poverty limit. So in a 4-person household at 225%, you're looking at a household income of about $62,000. Or participate in one or more of the public assistance programs on the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project's categorical eligibility list. Those projects include, but they're not limited to, CalWorks, Section 8 for very low and extremely low income classifications, Medicaid, etc. Staff is also proposing to have a set aside to ensure that priority applicants are able to receive funding. The applications would close for non-priority applicants once 50% of the funding is reserved. This ensures about $5 million for priority applicants. Topics to come. We anticipate having another work group at the beginning of next year where we will discuss incentive amounts, incentives for safety gear, e-bike cost limits, both on the low end and on the high end, and other implementation topics. So I understand this has been a lot to digest, but we're now going to open it up for questions and comments and discussion. Mary?
Yes, hi. Nick Caton, I have unmuted your line.
Awesome. Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, sweet. Hi, I'm Nick Caton. I'm the sustainability manager at SOLA Impact. Stands for South LA Impact. We're an affordable housing developer here in Los Angeles. About 85% of our residents are formerly homeless, and 95% come from Black and Brown communities. Perhaps our whole portfolio resides in disadvantaged communities. And so we're trying to take a batch approach to helping our residents get their applications through. Do you have any sort of advice for us? I could almost guarantee that every single one of them would qualify for this program, and we want to make it as easy as possible on them. So if there's anything that we can do at the company level, that would be super helpful to understand.
Yeah, thank you. I honestly would recommend doing what you're doing now and just staying engaged in this process. We will continue to hold work groups in the future, and once the administrator is onboarded, you should be able to work with them and let them know that you're interested. But I think most importantly, just continue coming to the work groups and staying engaged, because we'll have the Gov deliveries, we'll announce, and we won't just announce randomly. Like this will be a planned announcement.
Okay, the next speaker is Trev. I've unmuted your line.
Hello, how are you? My name is Trevor. I'm actually just trying to get some more information in regards to this. I've done a little bit of research. This would just be something for myself. I don't know exactly if this entails what the meeting is about now that I'm understanding it. Is this true, or is this something that has to be done through an entity?
So thank you for calling in. This is actually a program implementation work group. So we're not, the consumer facing program has not launched yet. And this is just, we're building the foundation and figuring out parameters. But if you are on the Gov delivery list that sent out this meeting notice, when the program is launched, you will be notified.
Understood. With that being said, would you recommend that I listen in to the rest of this meeting or kind of wait on standby? What would you recommend in that regard?
That is totally up to you.
Okay.
I think this stuff is really interesting. So
Yeah, it is. It is. I did not know. I think it's great what you guys are doing here. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. I
Okay.
think that's all I had.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, next is Troy Hightower. I've unmuted your line.
Good afternoon. This is Troy Hightower at TEH Electric Works in Bakersfield, California. My question is about the Cal EnviroScreen DAX. To be eligible, is there a certain level of percentile, like at least 75% or above, or it's just any disadvantaged community on Cal EnviroScreen?
So I don't actually have a really good way to answer this. Our climate investments branch gives staff and provides a list to the public of what is considered a disadvantaged community, a low-income community, and what communities are on the buffer based on census tract. I know that there's more that goes into that, but I don't know. I'm not sure what the definition is for Cal EnviroScreen. If I know that's not really helpful. But yeah.
Yeah, because Cal EnviroScreen and other projects like programs like TCC, they require at least 75% percentile rating on Cal EnviroScreen or above in order to be eligible. So that's the basis of my question. So I guess I'll just tune in to see if an answer to that question comes in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next commenter is Lewis Banks. Your line is unmuted.
Actually, Lewis, if you wouldn't mind holding just one moment, I do need to give a couple of quick instructions. First, attendees, just another note, the chat function is only available for participants that have American Sign Language needs. If you have a comment and you use American Sign Language, you may use the chat to send us a note to let us know and raise your hand so that we can promote you to panelist for you to be able to ask your question on camera. Everybody else, please do not send questions and comments through the chat. We are not able to monitor it for that reason, and it might inhibit us from being able to work with as American Sign Language needs. So again, please refrain from sending questions and comments in the written chat. Raise your hand if you have a question or comment. Additionally, interpretation services are being offered for today's session in Spanish as well. To listen and offer questions and comments in Spanish, please use the globe icon at the bottom of your screen that says interpretation. Select your language. And you can use English if you're asking a question, and then be able to hear the live rendering of that comment in English. Thank you. Mary, back to you.
Okay, Lewis Banks, your line is unmuted.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to, I'm also like Trevor, I think the last guy who spoke, a participant, and I'm very interested in this program. I believe I also qualify because I am in a DAC community. My question is also, you mentioned CalWorks and whatnot, as far as if you're part of that program, it'd probably be easier to participate. You didn't mention CalFresh. Is that also kind of on the same lines where we're kind of know that we'll be better situated for the program?
CalFresh will not be part of
Okay.
the categorical eligibility.
Okay, it's just, okay, then in my case, then, 'cause I don't get anything else, it'll be kind of my income base. Okay, right on. Thank you so much for answering my question. Thank you guys for everything that you do, and I look forward to more.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, next is Todd Edelman. I've unmuted your line.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi. The question is actually just came up based on what you just said. I just have a couple of quick questions. Why is CalFresh people get CalFresh not eligible? Second, but the main question to ask is that in a lot of cases, whatever the incentive is, there's going to be a lot left over, and where a lot of people would normally apply for financing, and low-income people are going to have difficulty with that. And I'm wondering if that's being considered. We can ask ourselves, where would the car industry be without its financing arm? Secondly, a lot of low-income families live in multifamily housing, and many of these apartment complexes they live in have minimal to no secure long-term parking. How will these people keep the bikes safe? Again, where would the car industry be if people didn't have places to safely secure their vehicles? And the third question is that will two people in the same household be eligible to get bikes? You might have, for example, two older teens who are too big to be carried on a bike that can carry children. Will they be both eligible, or will only one person in the household be eligible, creating a kind of problem with how siblings work in general? So if those things maybe can't be addressed today, if people could start thinking about them, it would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. So right off the bat, CalFresh is not considered a categorical eligible program simply because they do not income verify 100% of the participants in the program. And the programs that I've listed, amongst others, do have that 100% income verification. As for the safety question, having a safe place to lock your bike and all this stuff, one of the things we are considering is providing an additional incentive for bike safety gear. So that includes locks, lights, helmets, and safety vests. I know that it doesn't really help in terms of a place to store your bike, but if there is a bike rack, or if you're able to lock it up in your house, like that is always we're providing you with a lock so you can use. We're considering providing an incentive for safety gear so that people do have the option to do that. As for your last question, we are planning on having this incentive be per individual rather than per household. So the income is limited by household, but it will be per person. So yeah, that is what we're thinking. One incentive per person, per individual. So in the sibling situation, one sibling gets one and the other sibling would get one, provided they both apply and they meet the requirements.
Okay, next up is Lionel Mayers. I've unmuted your line, and there you go. Looks like you're unmuted.
Okay, hi. My question is for the incentive, right? Is this an hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I was muted by accident, I think. My question is, are we trying to encourage people to get e-bicycles? And if so, what can the state do to encourage more people to get e-bikes if that's the goal of this program? Because we don't have protected bike lanes or protected or bicycle paths, or dedicated bicycle paths or protected bike lanes, and that discourages people from getting bikes. I could imagine, because they don't feel safe bicycling in areas, because we live in a dominant car culture in LA County, or LA City for that matter. Thank you.
Lionel, I'm sorry, I did not hear the first part of your question, so I think I'm missing some context.
My question was, we're incentivizing people to get e-bikes if that's the goal of this program. I'm not sure. How can the state encourage people to get e-bikes or bicycle in general if there's no protected bicycle lanes or dedicated bike paths, especially in low-income, underrepresented neighborhoods, because we don't have sufficient protected bicycle infrastructure. That's my
Yeah,
question.
thank you.
Thank you.
So the purpose of this program, as you said, is to incentivize people into getting e-bikes. As for the bike lanes, like I fully understand and I fully recognize the struggles that it has when you don't have good bicycling infrastructure around you. We don't like this program isn't designed to help with that, and I know that's not a great answer, but there are other programs that do work on infrastructure, and then also you can try and work with your local municipalities and city governments into improving your active transportation infrastructure.
Okay, next up is Dwayne Strasser. I've unmuted your line. Hey, Dwayne, I think.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, guys. So first, as far as identification, I'm with the Northern Sierra Air Management District up above Sacramento. And we have 3 counties, including quite a heavy volume of DAC and low income communities. Also 25-year independent bicycle retail owner, and then both national and international bicycle advocacy experience. So I've got a lot of purview here. So the first thing, I want to thank you guys for listening to us the last couple of meetings, and including class 1, 2, and 3, making those changes, increasing the income levels. That's very generous the way that you've done that. I think that's really going to increase our participation. So one of the quick things I wanted to ask, so have you guys thought about any incentives for infrastructure? So what I can see happening up here, 12 years as mayor, 12 years city council, we're going to have issues with our homeless facilities putting in a bank of 120 volt plugins, for example, on the outside to plug in these e-bikes for that usage group. The city itself, they're going to have to, find a way to bone up $1,000 to put in 120 volt outlets near the bicycle racks that we have in town where people would park these e-bikes. Otherwise, they're stuck trying to lean them against a building or in a restaurant trying to plug them in to charge them throughout the day. So I just want to throw that out there long term to maybe think about a separate pool of incentive funding for the actual logistics, both to municipalities as well as homeless shelters, for example. And some individuals that live in apartments, they will not have a way to get a 40 or 50 pound e-bike easily up the stairway to plug it in. So they may have to plug it in downstairs in a garage. Many apartment garages don't have plugins. That's just my thought on that. And then I'll wrap up quickly. The gentleman that just spoke about bicycle lanes, for example, I know as an elected official that increased bicycle usage, if we get another 2,000 people on these e-bikes through this program, that justifies those of us who are elected to spend more money on infrastructure for bike lanes. So that goes hand in hand. The more people riding these bikes, the more justification we have to find money through the transit commissions and transportation commissions through the state to actually improve shouldering bike lanes and that type of thing. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, can you address the infrastructure question?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you for the question. So the funding that we received for this project really is intended for the vehicles and not for the infrastructure this time around. We do have a number of other programs, though, that do focus on mobility efforts that can help to support the infrastructure side. But as for this particular project, the funding will be specifically for the bikes.
Hey, Michael G., I've opened your line. Let's see. You need to unmute on your end, Michael G.
Got it. How about now?
Great.
Perfect. My question is, it looks like the majority of the incentives will be for disadvantaged areas rather than income. Now, my wife and I qualify for the income, but we're not in a disadvantaged area. What sort of chance do we have of obtaining one of the grants?
So I I don't know if I necessarily agree with you that it's only for disadvantaged communities and low income communities. Obviously, living in one of those gives you priority access, but if you are low income and you are at 225% of the federal poverty level or lower, you are considered a priority applicant. The income threshold we're setting is 300% of the federal poverty limit, and if you are between 226 and 300 and don't live in a disadvantaged community or low income community, then you're just a standard applicant, but your application may take longer to process, but we're trying to prioritize the lowest income individuals into getting an e-bike.
Okay, next up is Sten Wieland. Sten, I've unmuted your line.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Stan Wieland from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, but I'm mostly listening in as an interested consumer today. The question I have, or actually two questions, is first of all, how will this program combine with existing local incentives that already exist, for example, in Contra Costa County? And then second of all, excuse me, considering the income limits, I can envision that many students could be eligible as well. And if this is true, is this intended?
Thank you. So for the question about being able to stack incentives, we're still uncertain about that. So I don't have a good answer for you. We're still uncertain. As for the income limits, this program, if students meet the eligibility requirements, if students meet the income requirements, then students are eligible. We're not targeting students, or we're not trying to, fill the program with students. It's just, we're trying to get participation from low income individuals.
Okay, next is Kyler Blodgett. Your
Hi,
line is open.
thanks. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Hi, this is Kyler with People for Bikes. We're the National Trade Association for the bike industry. And I do just want to start by applauding you. I came to the past information session as well, and I'm glad that you heard the feedback and now are including Class 3 e-bikes as well as taking a really needs-based approach. So kudos on that. I'm really happy to see it. I have two questions if you have time for them. The first one is that, you probably followed what's happening in New York City about fires being caused by people not knowing how to charge e-bike batteries properly, linking several batteries together, leaving them plugged in overnight, etc. Do you know if there's any plan at the point of sale to equip customers with safe charging educational materials, like a pamphlet or something? That's question number one. Question number two, I'm not sure if you can speak for Pedal Ahead, knowing that they're just about to come on board, but do you have any sense of what data they're looking to collect from customers at the point of sale or afterwards, about demographics, use, etc., and how that data might be made available to the public? Thank you.
Yeah. So for your first question, we're still working on the education component of the e-bikes of this project. We are working with CHP on developing that education component, and that is something I can bring to our next meeting about having the safe charging. As for your second question about Pedal Ahead and what kind of data they plan on using, we're not certain yet. We know that like all of our other vehicle purchase incentive programs, we will be collecting demographics data. I don't know in what, it'll most likely be in a survey form, but I can't give you the specifics just yet.
Okay, next up is James Gross. I've unmuted your line.
Yeah, hi, thank you. This is James Gross. I'm the founder and CEO of Micromobility Industries. We work on getting people to mode shift into small electric vehicles. Based here in California, we put on sort of big events around the world, both here in America and in Europe specifically. Just to maybe challenge the opportunity here, which I applaud you for getting ahead and getting an incentive program going, which we think are so important to ultimately driving lightweight electric vehicle adoption, like e-bikes. But really, my question is just on it seems like there is a lot of focus on low income. When we know and we look at past historical, really well done incentive programs like electric vehicles, for instance, larger electric vehicles like cars that passed nationally, and some of the local programs I noticed you mentioned Denver, which has done very, very well, very high demand, which is going to lead to even more incentives. I guess one question is just why so much focus on the lower income, when ultimately, if it was open to a larger class of people, we have 40 million people here in California, we might see overwhelming demand, which could, of course, lead to much more funding for programs like this. My worry with these kind of constraints, in order to qualify, leads to lower adoption, leads to less likelihood of momentum and additional momentum that could lead to way more funding, which of course we need to get 40 million people into electric bikes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, James. So this program, its first goal is equity, and part of that is focusing on low income and providing incentives where they are needed most. I recognize that Denver is open. They don't have an income limit. Like, I recognize that Denver program is open and doesn't necessarily have, doesn't have the income restrictions that we are going to have, but we already know this program is going to be super successful. Like, there is so much interest in this program. We know we are going to be oversubscribed. And Lisa, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, we have limited funding. And so when we have limited funding, we have to tailor these programs to make sure that they're making the most impact as possible. One of the efforts that CARB has really been working towards is to try to have a stronger impact in the equity space and making sure that the dollars that we're spending really are reaching those that need them, that have not been able to access them in the past. And so we really are trying hard to move away from the standard first come, first serve programs, have more needs-based programs, and make sure that they work. And, this is new for us. We are still trying to find the best ways to go about it. But one of those ways we do know is to really limit the programs to be based on income and disadvantaged communities.
Okay, next up is Nick Caton. I've unmuted your line.
Awesome. Hi again, everyone. Nick Caton from Sola Impact. I just want to respond to an earlier question about DAX. At least the way I understood Cal EnviroScreen is if you're in the top 25th percentile, then you're considered a disadvantaged community, which I guess that's the way I read these program requirements as well. And then the second and more relevant part to my question is really, we really want to partner with Pedal Ahead and with CARB. We have these underutilized bike rooms in our affordable housing properties where we would like to offer our infrastructure, our bike rooms equipped with chargers, equipped with long-term safe storage for both our residents and then other community members throughout the greater Los Angeles region. And it's come up a couple times in questions on this call, where are the people going to store their bikes? Are they going to be charging them outside of restaurants? Are the homeless going to be hooking up to somebody else's building and using their electricity? We'd like to do a larger partnership with Pedal Ahead and with CARB to allow our residents and then other community members to use our bike rooms to store their e-bikes. So if there's any way you could connect me, I would really appreciate that. So I see us as a real estate company, an affordable housing real estate company, being able to service this kind of ecosystem you all are trying to create.
Thanks, Nick. I believe you've reached out to me prior to this, and I'll reconnect with you offline, and we can set up a meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And then I do want to note to everyone that we have 21 more raised hands. So please be patient, and thank you to everyone who has been waiting. Like, we know that your hand is there. So just, thank you.
Okay, Greg Dixon, I've unmuted your line.
Hey guys, thanks for hosting this. I think it's a cool thing that you're doing here. Just a couple of quick questions. So you mentioned only bike manufacturers that offer a 2-year warranty are eligible to participate. Number one, do you know how many bike manufacturers meet your requirements? Like, how many there are in California, number one, and how many are excluded because they don't offer that 2-year warranty? And then question number two, so once an eligible participant meets the requirement, how do you guys make payment? I was just curious, is it like a reimbursement situation? You buy the bike, you show your receipt, then you get funds. If it was a direct deposit or debit card type situation, I'm sure, some people could misuse monies who have no intention of buying an electric bike, but just want the free handout. So I was just curious. Anyway, maybe you've already addressed that, but how payment is made.
Thanks, Greg. Can you just state your affiliation?
I'm sorry, affiliation, how?
Are you just are you just a member of the public? Do you
Just a regular everyday citizen.
okay?
Yep.
Just checking. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many bike manufacturers will meet the 2-year warranty. I also don't know there's so many e-bike manufacturers. I don't know how many are in California. I don't know how many have that physical presence that we're looking for, either through a shop or through a corporate office or even manufacturing. But I do know that a lot of e-bike warranties do go anywhere from a year to about 5 years. And so we're trying to find that sweet spot. And this is something that we're proposing. And this is the first time we're proposing this warranty length. And we're obviously open to hearing from the public, from other stakeholders, from advocacy groups, whether or not this is the right length of time for a warranty to guarantee that the bikes are quality e-bikes and have support from the manufacturer. As for your second question, this will be an on the saddle incentive. So it will be point of sale, which means that a consumer will go into an eligible local bike shop or sign online with an eligible e-bike retailer, and say, hey, I'm eligible. And you'll see that price deduction right when you go to purchase.
Got it. Okay. And will there be a list of eligible bike shops, or is it up to the participant to seek them out?
No, we will have a list.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, just to add a tiny bit more clarification on that, Greg, there will be an application process. So you would have to apply to the program to participate. And then that's how even the bike shop would be able to know. So like we do with many of our other programs, mostly in the car space, consumers apply in advance. We verify your eligibility, and then you'd be able to you'd get here are all the bike shops near me that offer the bikes. And we would give you the information that you need to be able to go purchase that bike. We wouldn't just send you out on your own to figure it out. So we'll make sure that consumers have what they need at their fingertips.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, next up is Asher Myers. I've unmuted your mic. You just need to unmute at your end. Asher Myers.
Oh, hi. Sorry. Thank you for putting this on. I just had a question about the funding. So you mentioned the funding is limited, and I see an implied figure of $10 million in the presentation. I'm curious about the plans for increasing this over time, because if you scale Denver's to the size of California, it would be about $200 million. You're talking about $10 million, and Denver ran out of money. And so this feels a little bit like a problem of Ben & Jerry's opening up their store and only handing out 10 free scoops of ice cream. And so I'm wondering if, this can create some kind of blowback or disappointment, because so few people relative to the demand that we know is going to occur will be serviced over.
Lisa?
Yeah, thanks so much for the comment. We are aware that 10 million, or actually now 13 million, is not a significant amount of money, but that unfortunately is the only funds that we have available at this time. We, every single year, the state legislature and the governor develop a new budget. So it's possible that this program could get additional dedicated funding in the future. But for right now, all we have is 13 million. And so we're going to do our best to make sure that that 13 million is available and prioritized, again, for those consumers that really need the funding the most. And that's why we have the income requirements that we're proposing, as well as the kind of needs-based criteria that we're proposing as well.
Thank you.
Mary, before we take another raised hand, I do want to say for all the participants, the chat box is only for participants with ASL needs, and please, only for participants with ASL needs. Mary, next caller.
Okay, Darren Parks, I've unmuted your line.
Thank you so much. My name is Darren Parks, and I am with RAD Power Bikes. RAD is North America's largest e-bike provider. We have several locations in California, and always looking forward to adding more and growing in California. A couple of quick things that I wanted to address. One, Mr. Dixon mentioned with regard to warranty. I don't believe that the 2-year warranty is something that many in the industry currently comply with. And the other thing that I would say is that, and I just did a quick look at our warranty, competitors' warranties. They, quite frankly, some have one warranty on the frame, one warranty on the electrical components. Other parts have different warranties, and you're right, there is quite a range from a year to actually even some lifetime warranties. But what happens when you get into those 5-year and lifetime warranties and those longer warranty periods is, I think you're getting into the bikes that are $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 versus our bikes. One of our the key points of our mission and vision are bikes that are accessible to all. So our bikes range between $1,000 and $2,000 for all of our bikes. So if you start pushing warranty requirements higher and higher, I think you're going to make it more difficult, particularly for low-income people, to access the program. I'll give you the experience from Denver, which is with cargo e-bikes in particular. They actually did not have any cargo e-bikes under $5,800 when they first started their program, because they had too stringent requirements. They made some changes, and then people were able to purchase more accessible bikes. The second thing, just very quickly, is on the stackability, which I would encourage you to do, particularly with low-income communities. There are a lot of misconceptions that and I'm not putting this on you, but that low-income people should have some type of skin in the game and they shouldn't be able to stack programs. I would just note that at this particular economic time, folks at 300% and less of the poverty level don't necessarily have a lot of skin to give in the game. So, if there are other programs that they are eligible for, I don't see why they wouldn't be allowed to participate in some other program as well, whether it's from another governmental entity, from a church, whoever it's from. So thank you so much, and look forward to your comments.
Great. Yeah, thanks for those comments. I think when it comes to the stackability, if it's stacking with another entity's program, we can't really enforce that. So I think that there will be opportunities with the local incentives. We just don't have a good sense at the moment of what the scope is of everybody that is offering programs or plans to offer in the future, which is why it's a little hard for us to be able to speak to how it would all work. With regard to whether or not there's stackability with other state incentives, that is the area we're still exploring, that I think we can't again, we can't really speak to how that will work yet. Right now, this is the team that's been developing the program, and once we have the administrator on board, we'll be able to dive into these issues just a bit more. So more to come.
Next up is Karen Moore. Karen, I've unmuted your line and you just need to unmute from your end. Karen Moore.
Hello.
Hi.
Did hi, my name is Karen Moore. I live in Tracy, California, and I'm a member of Tracy Earth Projects. One of the things we do is we have a class where we teach kids how to take discarded bikes from the community and refurbish them so that they have bikes to ride. And we offer this at no charge. And of course, we make sure that the low income children are given first spots in each cohort. But one of the things I noticed, and I'm just hoping in the future, if you get more funding, you'll put aside some money for children with lung issues. I have asthma and I have stopped riding my bike. I want to buy an e-bike. I don't have the funds for that, but I think about, I had a friend whose son couldn't go to school except by a little bus that came by his house because of his lung issues. And so I'm hoping in the future, when you're thinking of setting aside funds and you get more funds, you'll set some aside for children that, you could get a doctor's note saying that they have a lung issue to help their parents, to give them more mobility again, give them that joy of riding a bike back. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Next is LaDonna Williams. LaDonna, I've unmuted your line.
Yes, hello, LaDonna Williams. Hi, I had a question concerning the application process where it says, I guess that's slide number 18, and it says that the applications will be accepted on a first come, first served basis. However, funds will automatically be reserved for priority applicants. I kept reading over that and it just confused me, and I wanted to know if you could add a little more clarity on what that would look like.
Yeah. So, Lisa, I feel like you are much better. You're more eloquent than I am.
So kind of one of the tenets of a needs-based program is ensuring that we're reserving funds such that when an applicant comes in that really needs the funds, they're still there for them. And so applications come in, so just as though you're a consumer that comes in and you apply, and we have to obviously kind of look at them as they come in. But if you come in and you meet priority criteria, we would automatically reserve funds for you. And if you don't meet the priority criteria, we would verify that you meet the basic criteria and then reserve funds for you. And so by doing that, by reserving funds and then verifying versus verifying and then reserving funds, it ensures that the priority applicants have access to the dollars if they need them. So if you come in and your address shows you live in a disadvantaged community, we're going to reserve the funds for you right away while we're going through and doing the final verification that your income is going to meet the program needs. If you come in and you don't live within a disadvantaged community or a low income community, and you note that your income does qualify you, then we would verify that your income qualifies you before we reserve the funds. And again, that's intended to ensure that the priority applicants, that those dollars are reserved up front for them while we're doing all the back end verification. Does that make sense?
The way you're explaining it makes a little more sense than how I'm reading it. Yes. Okay. And then my next question is, I think during the presentation, she mentioned that the administrator, when they come on board, isn't pedal ahead the administrator? And am I reading that right, that they will begin the work on December 1st, which is tomorrow?
Yes, so the grant has been signed and all of our grants have like a start date. And just with the holidays and everything, it made sense for them to start on December 1st. They did sign the grant, I believe the week of November 15th. But they're starting work tomorrow. They're able to start work tomorrow on the grant, and we're so excited.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up is Ted Hamilton Roll. I've unmuted your line.
Hi, this is Ted Hamilton Roll. I'm with the Santa Barbara County Air Pollution Control District. And I was just wondering, from the perspective of someone who works in an air district, what do you see our role in this program being as it moves forward, and how can we help?
I think Lisa looks like she's ready to answer that question.
Yes. Hi, Ted. Very good question. We definitely need your partnership. We actually will be talking with CAPCOA and the air districts here, I believe in the beginning of January, generally about all of our projects and how we can coordinate a whole lot better. But with regard to this one, as soon as we're able to get the ball rolling with Pedal Ahead, working with the air district partners and other grassroots organizations and community-based organizations to help kind of flesh out what our outreach plan is going to be and what support folks can provide is going to be one of the next things we tackle. So stay tuned. Feel free, shoot us your contact information if you can, and we'll make sure to include you as those conversations continue to move forward.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next up is Nicole Burgess. Nicole, I've unmuted your line.
Good afternoon. Thanks, you guys, Aria and Lisa. I appreciate the opportunity to comment, and I'm super excited about this program. So thank you for all the work you're doing. Just two comments. One is I definitely support one of the first comments about financing for these folks. There should be some type of financing in place for these folks to actually support their other means of getting this bike in their hands. But mainly I'm calling for safety. So I'm a big advocate for e-bikes and active transportation, and have ridden quite a few in San Diego, and just want to, as safety incentives that you're putting out was for locks and lights. These e-bikes can be well equipped with integrated lights, front and back lights, when they are sold. And I highly recommend that be one of the criteria rather than an incentive after the fact. The integration of lights on these bikes is not expensive for manufacturers. It's just a complete safety standard 24/7. Lights during the day, especially in the winter with a lot of shade, it just proves to be so much safer on the road. And I don't actually travel anywhere without lights 24/7. So when we're looking at these low income folks that are new to biking, we want to make this as accessible and easy for them. And we want them to be safe because we know our infrastructure isn't safe. So we want them to have the lights so that they're visible. So this can be done at this point right now to actually create a system where the bike actually, just kind of like the warranty, I actually support that. And if it's feasible to do that, I highly recommend it for lights as well, just purely for safety of these riders that we're going to put on the streets. And so I hope that this does not become a barrier of like lights being stolen. I have to charge my lights. I don't have lights. I'm getting a ticket because I don't have a light. All those things can be wiped out if we make sure and ensure that these incentives go to bikes with integrated lights. So I thank you for listening to those comments, and I'm very supportive of the program. So thank you.
Thank you.
Has it something been discussed by you guys? I guess is a question for you guys.
To require integrated bike lights,
front and back.
That is not something we've discussed, but I have written it down in my notes, and trust me, that'll be something that we're going to discuss.
I just want to highly recommend it, and I'm familiar with Pedal Ahead, and I see a lot of the riders there, and they do not have the lights, the proper safety equipment, and it should not be an afterthought where another company company is making money off lights to put onto bikes, that's not where we want these riders to go. They're going to be riding without lights. So please, please, I highly encourage your group to really look into that before the program officially rolls out. So thank you.
Okay, next is Mark Roast. I've unmuted your line.
Thank you. So I have a couple comments. One is that we're working on batteries that would be 2.25 kilowatt hours per kilogram, which means that and cheap once they're in full production. So that would mean that you wouldn't have to worry about charging as much or charging during the day. You could just do a whole day's driving and then charge at night at home or something. The other piece is the infrastructure. There is a lot of work that's already done on on making at-grade infrastructure safer. But what I propose is elevated bikeways that are manufactured in a factory to, mass customized to the site, and using composite structural materials and structural geometries that I've been involved with since 1975 on the geometry, and where you put in a foundation, you come in, put in the column, then you come in, put in the elevate thing. And the wonderful things about that are, one, that you don't have to stop at every stop sign and intersection, just go straight through. And I used to do a U-turn on the side street every time when I was going to high school, or no, grade school, on a bicycle, because it would take so much energy to accelerate it again. And so that's one piece. The other piece is get people up above all of the safety issues and looking at the view. I mean, we actually, like here in San Jose, or here in San Mateo, we've got beautiful mountains and things. You don't usually see them from street level. But if you're up above the buildings, you're up above the traffic, it's a pleasure that makes it that much more enjoyable to be up there, and gives that much more motivation to get off the street and get up there and enjoy it. But I figure you could get across San Francisco with an electric bike or an athlete in 15 minutes if you had an elevated structure you didn't have to stop at.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Today we're really just focused on the e-bike incentives. The funding that we have isn't
right
for infrastructure, but we appreciate the comment.
Yeah. But you might talk to the other people who, find out who might be interested in being involved in that, and then you could do public relations together on it.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, next up is Colin Karoshi. Colin, I've unmuted your line. You just need to unmute at your end.
Yes, hello.
Yes, hi.
Very good. Kuroishi is my last name.
Okay.
It's fine. I'm a concerned citizen as well. And I want to say that I love the inclusion of the brick and mortar stores and the online retailers, because it really expands what's available for consumers to make available to them. My question is, once someone has their hands on the bike, is there any long-term plans to keep funds in reserve for very low income for repairs and replacements, especially battery parts? Because it's a very delicate system, an e-bike can be. So if there's no long-term idea, or if there's no repair funds for repairs, it could potentially end up being a 50-pound piece of metal. So that was my question.
Thanks, Colin. So as of right now, we've only been focusing at the point of sale incentive. We haven't discussed having support for post-purchasing.
I think that doesn't preclude, I think, future funding supporting the potential for making sure that we do have some type of assurances. We do recently have a program that provides battery assurance support for EV buyers, low-income EV buyers. That the program doesn't exist yet, but we just received funding for it and we'll be developing it next year. While that doesn't cross over to bikes, it is something we're going to learn from and that we could definitely potentially make available for a program like this in the future. So thank you for the comment.
Carl Pope, you're the next speaker. I've unmuted your mic. You just need to unmute at your end. Carl? Carl Pope? Okay. We'll come back. Ron Brazil? I've unmuted your line.
Okay, thank you. I'm with the Sacramento Area Bicycle Advocates, and maybe you touched on this a little bit, but I was wondering if you're going to have like outreach, promotional packets or something like that to groups like ours that would help get the word out to the target underserved areas. I wanted to compliment or echo the lights as a safety issue. I think that would be fantastic to be part of that. And the third comment was, and related to safety, is questioning, I think you said including the class 3 bikes, which I think are go up to 28 miles an hour rather than 20 miles an hour. Why would you include those when the infrastructure is already kind of limited to where we can ride the bikes? And yeah, interested in your comments on that.
Thanks, Ron. So as for outreach, we definitely plan on partnering with CBOs, to community-based organizations, to help get the word out about this program. So I don't know what, like, we're still at the very beginning stages of this, and so we are not working with CBOs just yet, but we will be. As for the inclusion of class 3 e-bikes, there was overwhelming support to include class 3 e-bikes at our last 2 meetings, which is why we understand that they're not necessarily allowed on all bike paths and there are special rules and everything, but the overwhelming support to have them included was far greater than to not have them included.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Carl Pope. Carl, I've unmuted you.
All right, thank you. Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hi, just first of all, I want to say thank you, and I hope that someday we can all consider clean air to breathe a human right, and I'm sure this is going towards that. My first question is are there any age requirements? For example, can a 6-year-old apply for this program? And I assume their parents would have to help them out, but I just wanted to throw that question out there. And then the second more important question is, are there any educational and training programs that you will be coordinating with to make sure that e-bike riders have the resources they need to be safe? I'm in the city of Carlsbad, and they recently declared a traffic safety emergency after several bikers were killed, and that is ongoing, and they're doing a bunch of infrastructure improvements. But really, in terms of the training and education portion, there really aren't a whole lot of resources out there that are easily accessible for a lot of people. So those are my 2 questions.
Thanks, Carl. So, oh goodness, I forgot your first question. I'm so sorry. For the
age requirements, sorry.
Yes, age requirements. That is something that we are still discussing internally at CARB. So we haven't put forth age requirements. We recognize that this is different than the CARB programs, that we can't just say you have to have a license, because we know that there are certain use cases for high school students who could be eligible to help them get to school, and then obviously alleviate the burden from their parents, and even grade school. So we don't have an age requirement yet, but that is something that we will definitely have before the program launches. As for the safety component, we are working with CHP and other state agencies to develop a safety program. There was a bill that I don't remember the bill number that was passed that basically directs some state agencies to develop an education, like a bike safety education class that's accessible to all residents, and we're in talks with those agencies, and we meet with them regularly to discuss this class.
Colin Bogart, your line has been unmuted.
Hi, yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to start by saying I'm so excited that this program is launching tomorrow. Wow. And I want to thank you for all the work you've been doing on this. I think I participated in one of your first panels like a year and a half or so ago. I'm the education, or I'm the active transportation director at Day One, which is a public health nonprofit in Pasadena. And I was formerly the education director at the LA County Bicycle Coalition for about 11.5 years. First off, I want to echo Nicole's recommendation for integrated lights. That's super important. And really, if you're building an electric bike, there's no excuse not to include the lights. If you ever wondered what the white reflector is all about on the bikes that you buy, regular bikes that you buy at a bike shop, that was a compromise with the bike industry years ago when they wanted to require lights on bikes in the first place. And the bike industry didn't really like that. So they came up with this compromise. The problem is that a white reflector on the front of your bike doesn't actually save you. By the time that by the time that reflector works, it's too late. So anyway, point being is integrated lights make sense with an electric bike and should be part of your requirement, I think, in terms of what equipment. Which brings me to the warranty issue. I was glad to hear that a few other people perked up regarding that as well. I hadn't really considered that before. I did do a quick search online for some of the prominent e-bike manufacturers that I'm familiar with, both cargo and non-cargo models. And it seemed like a lot of them had either like 2 years or more as a warranty. And I think it's important that you define clearly what the warranty covers. Basically, you got to make sure your frame and your fork are in good working condition and that those are covered. Everything else is basically replaceable, although obviously an electric motor is a big deal too. So I would recommend that you look into that and definitely check to see how many companies actually have a warranty of like 2 years. I was actually surprised to find that one of the prominent cargo bike companies that I really like seems to only offer 1 year on their frames, which I thought was quite surprising. So yeah, I think it's a good issue, and I think it makes sense because you want to make sure that you're funding good quality bikes, because there's a lot of really low quality e-bikes out there at this point. I've talked to plenty of people who have e-bikes that they can't get fixed and they can't ride anymore because they decided to go for something really cheap. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I guess it would be under the topic, the subject of topics to come, which was one of your slides. I want to really stress the importance of providing information for people who would be considering purchasing an e-bike through your program. I have a very good friend of mine who just recently was able to get an e-bike through the AQMD run program here in Southern California. And she's like one of the first people to actually get one of these bikes in that program. And she found that there was little or no guidance or assistance whatsoever in terms of helping her make choices as to where to get an electric bike, and then what factors to consider when you're choosing your electric bike, all of which, or many of which, are going to affect the cost and whether or not that bike is going to fit your needs. And so I would say I would strongly recommend that you come up with some sort of guide that would be available to anybody who's thinking of taking advantage of this program, to help them make those decisions and to make those choices before they go buy their bike or before they make their choice. And then I think it would also be good to include, basic information that they may not know, because, there's a lot of people, if they're going to get into this and they've never really been into bikes before, there's going to be a steep learning curve. And so, stuff like where to lock your bike, where not to lock your bike, what kind of bike lock to use, all that stuff is also, I think, going to be really important. I thought it was interesting, the discussion about battery and the fact that people wouldn't be able to haul their bike indoors potentially to charge. Well, that could be a consideration that you put in your guide to let people know that a lot of bike models do have removable batteries that you can take inside if you need to. So, these aren't electric cars. You don't have to park it outside and plug it in. That's not how it works. I think all of that can be packaged into a nice either document that you make available, or it could be on the website, however you do it. But I think that's going to be some important information that you can provide that's really going to help people. My friend who got this bike through the AQMD had a bazillion questions for me, and I was happy to answer them all. And it was really fun to talk about the gear because I'm a total geek that way. But she's somebody who already rides quite a bit. And so it made me wonder, like, what is somebody who's really new to biking or just getting back into it? They're going to need this information. The other thing I would recommend is, if you haven't already considered it, is partnering up with a free bike registration service, so that if people's bikes do get stolen, they at least stand a chance of getting it back again. Specifically, I want to mention Bike Index. And the reason I mention them is that because they're at the national level. Local bike registration just within your city is not very, it doesn't work. Because what happens if your bike gets stolen in Pasadena, where I live, but it ends up popping up somewhere else completely different, that may or may not translate. I don't know. But I know the Bike Index is a national service. It's a free service, and they're a nonprofit themselves. So they're not a for-profit company. I would definitely include that in your guide and recommendations to people, and even like how to, where to find that serial number so that you can register the bike. Most people don't even know that. And then I would agree with education. I think that, and I think this was my comment to you like a year or so ago, is I think you should definitely make education available and encourage it, because e-bikes are not exactly the same as what's being called acoustic bikes these days. I love that term. Regular bikes are now called acoustic bikes. I love it. Anyway, I would make it available and make it strongly encouraged, but I'm still not convinced that you should make it a necessity or a requirement, because I'm not sure everybody's going to have the time and freedom and flexibility to attend a class or something like that. But I think it should definitely be encouraged. On that note, and I'm almost done, CHP, I can't really recommend them as your go-to for safety education, or I got the impression that maybe you were leaning on them for education about things like battery charging and stuff like that. I have to admit, I'm sorry to say that my experience with a lot of police agencies is that there's a lot of police agencies that don't really know this, don't even know the law for biking in the state of California very well. So I'd say if you're going to work with them, fine, but I would really ask you to vet the materials that you come up with a lot of the other organizations in California and beyond that know this stuff really well, namely Cal Bike here in California, People for Bikes. I know there was somebody on earlier from People for Bikes, the League of American Bicyclists. Vet this stuff with them. And also when it comes to that buying guide, vet that with them as well. One of the reasons the AQMD told my friend that they couldn't make recommendations about where to get a bike and what to consider for your bike purchase they just kind of said, well, we're not allowed to recommend, any one shop or bike brand over another. And I think that was really a cop-out answer, because you don't have to recommend specific brands, but you could tell people, okay, you're thinking of buying an e-bike. Do you want to get one that has an integrated battery built into the frame, or do you want to get one that's detachable and easily carried inside your house? You don't have to specify any particular brands to give that recommendation, but it's valuable information. I would just ask that, yeah, definitely utilize some of the organizations that are familiar with this information and have trained people like league cycling instructors who can really help you with that, and would probably be more than happy to do so. And then, since I've already registered, I would just ask you, please keep me posted about future decisions or meetings, etc. I'd be happy to contribute as much as I can. That's part of my role at day one. And thank you so much for the time.
Aria, you're muted. Oh, there you
Yep,
go.
I saw that. Thanks. Thanks, Colin. There are two things I did want to just state and clarify for everybody. The program is not launched.
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Sorry, is this James Thorne?
Yes.
Sorry, I
No worries.
Jump the
I'll get back
gun.
in line. I'll get back in line.
I'll mute you and unmute you as soon as she's done. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. There are two things that I do want to clarify. The program is not launching tomorrow. The administrator can start working on the program tomorrow, which means that we're still aiming to launch the consumer-facing program in the first quarter of 2023. The second thing I wanted to clarify is that CHP is helping with the safety education only. We're not leaning on them for a whole bunch of things. Like the state legislature said to CHP and other agencies that we needed to come up with a bike safety education class. And rather than duplicate efforts, we're working with them so that there's a good safety program for all participants of this program, as well as statewide.
Okay, I'm going to go back to James Thorne. I've unmuted you, and there you go, to unmute.
Okay, great. Thank you. Couple of comments here, and then maybe something that might help out. I'm just trying to understand here the focus of what this program is trying to do. By that I mean is it to help people with DAC requirements to replace public transportation? So, and if that's the case, or is it to use public transportation and their e-bikes at the same time? Well, the issue with that is that e-bikes are not light. They're pretty heavy, about 50 to 60 pounds or more. So they're gonna have to lift that, put it out on the bus rack, and then take it off, and then possibly do that, who knows, to get to the final destination. Another thing is the focus of this, I would assume, is to have people replace their cars and use their e-bikes. So that's where I fit in. I live close enough, and there's plenty of bike trails here in Kern County that I can do that safely. But when there's a cap, there's a eligibility cap, then that means I'm gonna have to go back to using my car, or I'm gonna have to go back and just pay the full price without taking advantage of this kind of program. And then another thing too is quality bikes. They cost about $1,500 or more. They're not the $750 rebate will help, but then people that are in the DAC designation, they're gonna realize, well, now I owe an extra $300 to $500 more as opposed to taking public transportation. So your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, James. So the purpose of this program is not to replace public transit. It's to help people get onto e-bikes and increase their mobility. This program isn't just limited to people who live near public transit. It's for anyone who meets our requirements. So that could be someone in the middle of San Francisco, or that could be someone in the middle of Trinity County. It's not meant to replace public transit or supplement public transit. It's meant to increase mobility for people. As for it only being for DAX and having that like $300 to $500 price tag on top of the incentive, the program is not intended to fully subsidize the cost of an e-bike. We're trying to absorb the incremental cost between a regular bicycle and an electric bicycle of similar quality. So this program is not intended to pay for the entire bike. It's to assist in paying for the electric bicycle.
Okay, I'm going to move to Randy Clark. Randy, I've unmuted your line.
Yes, hi, thank you. I wanted to make a comment on the 2-year warranty, and since 3 people have already commented, this is Randy Clark from Iconic E-Bikes. Wanted to comment on the 2-year warranty, but I think 3 people have already commented on it, so I'm going to keep my comments short. I think as you guys look more into it and look into the industry standard, you're going to see that a lot of the top brands are primarily using or going with a 1-year warranty. You'll also find that a lot of the brands will have a tiered warranty policy where they'll have a 5-year warranty on the frame, a 2-year warranty on the electrical system, including the controller, the motor, and the sensors, and only a 1-year on the battery. So I just want you guys to take some more time to maybe look at that, because if you stick to the 2-year warranty, you're going to possibly eliminate some of the top brands, and also may move your price point up a little bit higher for your buyers. So I just wanted to readdress that. Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. I do want to note, thank you for your comment. I do want to note to everyone that we have about 10 more raised hands, and we only have about 30 minutes to get through them. My last slide is very quick, so that, we're going to dedicate 97% of that time to raised hands.
Hey, Phoebe Ford, I've unmuted your mic. Just need to unmute from your end. Phoebe? Phoebe
Hi,
Ford?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay. So I am just listening in. This is the first webinar I came in. I'm just a citizen in San Francisco, and I ride an e-bike a lot. And I guess listening to the context of this call, one of my learnings was that $10 million is just a really small program. And I'm wondering about the administrative burden of what sounds like a really complicated eligibility criteria. And I'm wondering what you guys are doing to try and make that easier for the applicants, for the shops to administer, for the state. And how much are we spending on just trying to gate this program? And shouldn't we just lottery it if we think that the demand is going to be so high relative to the funding? And that's all I've got.
Lisa, do you want to take this?
Yep, great. Yeah, thanks, Phoebe. So we recognize that when we have an when we have a program that has income eligibility, there is additional administration that goes along with that. But we do have a lot of experience in running these programs, and we are pretty confident that we're going to be able to design the application process in a way that isn't overly burdensome for folks to be able to apply and get in the program. We did not, unfortunately, design the program at the onset to be lottery based. And so in order for us to go that route, that would take some very significant changes right now. And we know that there's a lot of interest in us just getting this program out there. So we won't be doing lottery for the program. Instead, we have decided to take a needs-based approach, and that needs-based approach identifies the set of criteria that we had flagged in some earlier slides, by which we would close the program after so much of the funds have been reserved, so that priority applicants really have an opportunity to take advantage of the funds. Again, we do expect the funding to go relatively quickly, but we do think that the priorities that we've placed in the program will keep it from, we'll keep the program from closing too fast, at least.
Okay, Randy Clark, you're next. Please unmute your line and state your affiliation.
Hi, I think I just went.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay, let's go to Hannah Miyamoto. Hannah, I've unmuted your line.
Yep. And can you hear me now? Yes. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Yes.
Yeah, Hannah Miyamoto, and I live in the San Diego area. And I'm trying to get involved in Pedal Ahead SD, but currently I'm just a citizen. I'm gonna make it really brief. I apologize if I didn't get into the beginning of this lecture, but I'll be curious about how you set up divided responsibilities between CARB and Pedal Ahead. Maybe I don't know, maybe in relevant part you can make some summary available of the memory. I assume it's a memory of understanding or a contract that you've signed, so we know who's responsible for what, because that's what's most important of all, I think. That's one piece. And the other thing I think what I want to summarize, I think I've heard from a lot of people here, is there should have to be some system for keeping in contact for the recipients of this participants in this program, I think. And basically a lot of this is a bit of a pilot, and we need a lot of information. We just can't let these benefits just go out there and then we don't know if they did any good or not, or change anyone's life or anything. But I think that. But that's why I think I want to be part of Pedal Ahead, and since it's available to me. And thanks. So I think it's it. Aria, you have a response?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. So first of all, we do have online a draft solicitation. We have our solicitation that was launched, which is what helped us get to the point of selecting Pedal Ahead. And within that solicitation is a draft grant agreement. And so I can, when I'm done with this, post a link to those materials, so that you can see generally what the grants look like. And the only difference between the final signed grant and that, the draft grant that's posted, is some fine tuning of the scope of work based on what was in the overall proposal. Now, generally speaking, for CARB and our administrators, it is our responsibility at CARB is to set the policy for the program. We set all of the policies. Any policy decision that gets made is made entirely by CARB. We look to the administrator to help us identify the pathway by which the applicants will come through the program, helping get the consumers through the program, and helping report back to us the information that's collected and report on the metrics, so that we can understand what we're gaining from the program and what's working and what isn't. So we get a lot of lessons learned from the administrator. But all of the key decision making is all done by CARB. So on your point on keeping in contact with recipients and metrics, having metrics is really important to us because we do want to make sure that these incentives are effective. I think earlier on, excuse me, earlier on, somebody had commented about about the data and making sure that we're able to kind of speak to what we're getting out of the program. And that's exactly right. We will be collecting information across the applicants through their application, through surveys and things like that. Plus, we do follow-up surveys in our programs so that we can find out how the bike has worked, what benefit it has provided. And one of the things we talked about at earlier work groups that will be something we tackle again in the future potentially, is whether or not there'll be options for actually logging miles on the bike so that we can learn a little bit about the use case scenarios of consumers in the program. So there will be a lot of opportunities for us to collect data, and we will be, as we make additional future funding decisions, we will come back and provide that data. We'll have a program website where members of the public will be able to go and see what that data looks like, how many people have participated, how many dollars that has been, where the participation has been, what our lessons learned have been, things like that. So we'll be providing all of that information in as public a way as possible.
Hey, next up is Sandy Brambilla. Hope I didn't mispronounce that too badly. Sandy, if you can open your mic at your end.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Thank you.
Great.
So I'm Sandy, and I'm an interested community member in Southeast Los Angeles. And first, I'd like to echo Colin's sentiment to provide guidelines or at least minimum requirements for a good quality e-bike. Someone new to cycling wouldn't even know what questions to ask in regards to a regular bike, and much less a quality e-bike that will last. Personally, I'm someone who previously purchased an e-bike that is no longer supported by the manufacturer. It was an investment on my end so that I could commute, and luckily it actually still works, but I know that my time with it is limited, and once it stops working, I'll basically have e-waste on my hands that I personally will have to figure out what to do with. And then also I do have a question. Is there going to be a time limit in which the vouchers need to be used once the vouchers are distributed? Do they have an expiration date? Community members may need additional time to come up with, some funding. We know e-bikes are expensive, and the voucher likely won't cover the full cost of, they're not intended to cover the full cost of an e-bike, but people need to budget for things like this. It's a big expense. So what are plans for that?
Thanks, Sandy. So we don't, I know this isn't what you want to hear. We don't actually have a plan just yet, but we will have one. And I know that in the vehicle purchase programs, especially with the shortages and the limited supply, we've been aware of that, and we've been working with the consumers so that they get more time to make those purchases. And I expect that we will do something similar here as well.
Okay, next is Todd Edelman. Todd, I've unmuted your mic.
Hi again. Yeah. So just responding to a couple things. Somebody asked about why just low income, and I mentioned earlier the financing thing, which I appreciate somebody supported, is that middle income people can more easily get financing for e-bikes more easily than low income households or individuals can. The second is I'm in touch pretty regularly with the people in New York working on the battery charging issue. That's mostly an issue, or almost exclusively an issue, with bikes used commercially and people getting cheap parts and cheap chargers and stuff. In fact, like the fire department people have said, they haven't had an issue with certified, UL certified, and otherwise relatively good quality e-bikes causing any of the fires. And then the main solution they're working on there is some kind of actually battery swapping system for those users. A lot of what people are talking about, something I mentioned to other people, is kind of like a e-bike, not just an e-bike, but an e-bike life or e-bike lifestyle. As we know, society's already kind of set up for a car lifestyle, ICE car, and a lot of times, especially in California and urban areas, an EV lifestyle, where it's not set up for people with electric bikes. So people are talking a lot about complementary measures, like integrated lights, purchasing guide education, and registration, and things like that. I wanted to add that a lot of even normal rental insurance policies don't cover e-bikes, and so there should be a subsidy that can include that, or that can be included hopefully as part of like a kind of like a bundle that people are able to apply for, kind of maybe even a one-stop shop that Pedal Ahead can kind of facilitate, because there's all these little bits that are already kind of automatic for cars and EVs that aren't included for e-bikes. And I want to also make it clear that things like bike index are good in theory, but recovery rate for bikes that are, in that program is really low. Kind of the reverse, like 20%, the reverse of what happens with cars that are stolen. And again, I want to emphasize that somebody mentioned kind of integration or alluded to integration of electric bikes with public transportation. And again, that's a problem with storage. There's not a possibility to store larger e-bikes that, like, somebody wants to maybe take their kids to school with an e-bike and then park it at a train station or a transit hub. There's no place to park these bikes. It's the same issue as long-term storage at apartments. To kind of make an analogy, if we're giving people these, helping people get these expensive bikes and not doing anything to help real long-term storage, which a lot of progressive cities and stuff have. They make a differentiation between short-term and long-term storage. It's kind of like subsidizing the EV that the doors don't lock. So we really, really, really need to strongly emphasize that. It's going to be a problem. There's no dignity in hauling an e-bike upstairs into your second level modest apartment, or having it in your dining room where everyone's banging onto it because there's no parking. So somehow that needs to get dealt with, either in legislation or with some kind of bundle concept, as I mentioned. So thanks very much again for letting me speak a second time.
Thanks, Todd.
Next is Teresa Lynn Bouchard. Teresa, I've unmuted your line.
Hi, this is Teresa Lynn. I don't have an affiliation. I just had a quick question regarding the income. Were those based on it's based on the federal poverty level, but is that gross or net incomes?
That'll be gross.
Gross, okay. All right, that's all I had, thanks.
Okay, next is Jean Severinghouse. Jean, I've unmuted your mic.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm very supportive of this program, very excited. I helped start an e-bike rental program through a grant 8 years ago, and the grantor gave me funds to buy an e-bike. So I've been riding it for 8 years, and there's a couple of things I would want to pass on. One is that they're much heavier bikes, and you have to get your brakes attended to much more frequently than on a regular bike. And I don't know if you've thought about this, or maybe a topic for next time, but think about have something where the e-bike purchase comes with some kind of a maintenance ticket that in every 6 months for the first 2 years, you have an appointment to get your brakes adjusted or checked as needed. It's incredibly important because they can go quite quickly. They can be seeming great, and then all of a sudden you're having to use your feet to drag on the ground to stop. So number one is some way to let people know about the fact that you do have to get your brakes looked at. And I've been a biker for 60 years, and it's still, it's like they're tricky because they're so much heavier. So it's not like I can just fix the brakes the way I could on my old bike. So that's number one. Number two is the battery situation. And this is probably way bigger than this CARB program, but it'd be good for, if 10 million is going out there towards the purchase of high quality e-bikes, hope that we think about what happens with battery life. So my battery, I can either ship it to Nevada to get it refurbished for $600, or I'm waiting in line for somebody to hopefully take pity on my manufacturer types that was sold 3 times and come around and supply a new battery again for $800. So what happens, can CARB start like a conversation about having an in-state, like one in LA and one in the San Francisco Bay Area, to refurbish e-bike batteries as they wear out? So I know that's a long shot, but I think it would be really worth CARB putting some weight behind that. Thanks so much for this program. Very excited about it.
Thanks, Jean.
Okay, next is Pete Cannon. Pete, I've unmuted your line. You just need to unmute at your end.
Hi, this is Piet Cannon with Ecology Action. I just want to say thanks for CARB for allowing so many people to comment on this program and so many good comments. I just wanted to say, I mean, I think one of the threads of these comments is that, you know, that getting an electric bike with an incentive is just the beginning, and that there needs to be this kind of complex support system to making sure that people use the bikes for the purpose that they're intended to, right? To replace car trips. And I would say part of that is supporting local bike shops. And I think having online retailers and brick and mortar is good, but maybe providing an extra $100 or $200 increase in incentive for going to a brick and mortar place, because then you know you can get your bike serviced there. More and more brick and mortar bike shops are going out of business. And so that's going the other way from creating the support system that's deteriorating from that support system for bikes. And then also in terms of the support system of targeting equity, I would say, you know, the program, CARB wants to launch it in 4 months by the end of March for 2023, that to contact the community-based organizations that are working in the DAC and low-income communities to make sure that these folks are able to know about the incentives and to kind of go through the process of understanding how electric bikes can meet their transportation needs. So I would stress that as a major point. And then also for safety, I thought that the RFP for this administrator safety was a separate part of that, and the safety class was going to be integrated into the process of the consumer getting the incentive. And I don't know if you could talk a little bit more about that. I mean, it's still under development, but as a lot of speakers have talked about, you know, safety is such a crucial element to making sure that these bikes are ridden, you know, ridden safely, ridden responsibly, and ridden for a long time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Piet. So for the safety component, they do have a carve out for helping establish a safety program. What's nice is that that safety program can look different and also supplement the statewide safety program. So that's going to be with the statewide safety program being developed with CHP and other state agencies. I think that there's a lot of fluidity right now with the safety program specifically for this project. They haven't. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Were you done?
I was going to say that, you know, Pedal Ahead hasn't been able to start work on this project yet, and we haven't been able to work with them yet. And I think that once we do, we'll have a better understanding of what this program is going to look like in the future.
Okay, next is Bruce Olson. Bruce, I've unmuted your line. If you could state your affiliation.
Yeah, Bruce Olson. I am Mr. Bicycle of East Contra Costa County. I'd like to make 2 points. Number one, I think e-bikes are in the same position right now that cars were at the beginning of the last century when Henry Ford introduced the Model T. I think we should look for e-bikes to take off in the future. That's just my opinion. Second, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, which is the transportation planning organization of the 9 Bay Area counties around San Francisco, is creating its transportation plan for the next 30 years right now. In its draft plan, over 2/3 of its money will be spent on freeways. A bit less than 1/3 will go to public transit, both trains and buses, and a measly 3% of all of its money is earmarked for non-traditional transportation methods and infrastructure such as e-bikes. I don't want to rain on the parade. I'm just saying The contrast is gigantic.
Thanks, Bruce. With that, we're gonna move on to the next slides. I know that there are like 1 or 2 more raised hands, and we'll try to get to it. Try to get to them before 6 o'clock. Let me just move my next slide. Okay. So next steps. Once the administrator is onboarded, we will work with them to develop terms and conditions, as well as the process for applying and outreach. We'll hold another work group in January to discuss incentive amounts and other implementation topics. So keep an eye out for the Gov delivery notice of the next work group. Okay. And in closing, there are no more raised hands. In closing, here is our contact information, my email, Lisa's email, as well as our specific e-bike listserv. I've been sending these out to the CVRP listserv as well as some others. I am going to stop doing that just because this is not part of CVRP. It's a separate project. So I do want to just let everyone know that please sign up for this specific list if you want to continue being part of these work groups. And with that, if there's any last raised hands or any last questions or comments, if not, we'll go ahead and end the meeting.
Actually, there is a raised hand. Gary, say.
Wait, hi. Thanks so much for letting me join in. I've been listening for a while, but I just wanted to reiterate this. I've been hearing this debate about quality, versus incentive amount, et cetera. I just wanted to mention that thinking about the requirements for the warranties and things like that, I really like the package deal. Maybe offering some of the incentive to pay for a local bike shop service package or something. Maybe I didn't hear that exactly, but that's an idea I'd like to propose, that some of that could go towards the cost of a package like that, a support package, if you will, so that you don't have to artificially limit selection or availability of vehicles just because of the warranty. Just thinking about some of the bike shops that might be out there, they might not have a very large selection, especially if they're if they cater to certain price points, if they're already located in a DAC somewhere, they just might not have a wide selection. So just urging you to consider that balance between the quality of the bicycle that you are advocating for and providing for versus the requirements for the warranty versus the actual availability of those products in the market in the communities that you wish to target the most. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Hartzell, I've unmuted your mic.
Thank you. I've been listening for the last 2 hours for a key piece of information, and it was on the agenda, but I never actually heard it mentioned. I hope you could go over it now. And that's the timeline for the program. When do you expect the program to formally begin and open to the public? Thank you.
So we are aiming to launch the program sometime in the first quarter of 2023. The consumer-facing program where someone can apply for the incentive.
Okay, thank you.
Ambitious, but we're still going for it. So fingers crossed we can get everything set up. Platform development is the hardest part. So it is important to kind of keep in mind that as we develop the platforms to launch the program, we could hit some time delays there. But we are hoping to have it open as soon as possible.
Okay, there are no other raised hands in the chat.
Well, I just want to say thank you everyone for attending and sticking it through for 2 hours. And once again, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email myself or Lisa, and our emails are on the screen.